Pardon me. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it's just past midnight on Friday, the 16th of May. That makes this the news for Thursday, the 15th of May, day 1177 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. And even as Zelensky is flying back to Poland from his day in Ankara for the peace talks that Putin called, Putin himself is hiding in a bunker in the Kremlin. Typical, typical, typical. So I see that the peeps are coming in. Skippy, that's a new one. Hey, Skip. Hey, Eli. Hey, Debbie. Hey, Steven. Hey, Steve with a V. Hey, Mad Mike. How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, Bobby. Here I am. Did you see Bobby? I'm so sorry. But I did fall asleep last night. And I swear to God, this is true. I woke up and I looked at the phone and it was 11:59. And I was like, no, I'm going to sleep now. I'm just going to sleep. So I am sorry. Now, you notice, I was thinking about this. That's the second time now that it's happened in the last month. It has been a very busy it's been busy. But it's the second time in the last month that happened, and it happened on a Wednesday both times. It's like the middle of the week, right? Like, those first three, whatever days, however long they are, days. And Wednesday night, I just can't do it. I just am passed out. And I obviously, I'm not going to give up the live from now on, but every once in a while on a Wednesday, when I don't show up, just be assured I just went to sleep. Bobby, you know that I'll always be faithful to you, big boy. Oh, God, I'd love to be seeing somebody else. The problem is nobody here really speaks English. And I have to be able to talk to people, Anyway, hey, Wes. Hey, it's a new dawn. Nicola Jones, how you doing? Lars. Amber, how do you do, Amber? So a couple things first, real quick, while people are still coming in. Hey, Freedom Doesn't Last. Hey, Nightshade. Oh, all the peeps are here tonight. Nice. So, hey, little Red. Waza. So, guys, let me do this real quick while people are still coming in, and then we'll get to things. I'm deeply appreciative because I got to have live sponsors, right? The live sponsors and the Patreon people keep this channel on the air. Speaking of Patreon sponsors, there's Chris Carter. Hey, Chris Carter. Chris Carter is one of the sponsors of tonight's live. Chris is a Patreon member and has been for a long time, as is Blue Ariel Silk. And so twice a month, those guys get live sponsorships. And so big thanks to Chris Carter and to Blue Ariel Silk. If you see them around, thank them. But we have another sponsor for the first time, Miss Jax. Jax, I don't know if you're here, but if you're here, say hello and let everybody say thanks to Jax. And Jax sponsoring a live is a trend of new sponsors. Samso was our sponsor the last live. Now we got Jax tonight. Tomorrow it's Scully. And then on Monday it'll be... oh my God, Ted, I'm so sorry. Your last name escapes me, and I don't know what your TikTok handle is. So for right now, let's just say Ted. All brand new sponsors who had never sponsored before. She spells it Jax, by the way. Jax, that Jax. So it's important to me, right, that this is a community where lots of people contribute a little, what they can. And if you can't contribute, please don't apologize for it. Just like, comment, and share, please. And when you can, favorite. Favorites really, the algorithm loves the favorites. So, oh, thanks, Lars. So, for all the new sponsors, especially our sponsor tonight, Jax, I'm deeply appreciative. The channel would not exist. I would not be able to put the time and energy into it that I do without this community of support. So thank you. Hey, Russell Kennedy. Hey, Jacob Grady. How you doing, bud? Hey, Weibo. So let's start with Istanbul, shall we? Although really it's not Istanbul that we start with. It's Ankara. So the capital of Turkey is Ankara. Zelensky flew to Ankara today and had a 3-hour meeting with Erdogan. Now, Erdogan is a tricky situation, right? Turkey, the whole Turkey thing is a tricky situation. Turkey is both a NATO member and a good friend to Russia. Long historical economic ties to Russia, combined with NATO membership, make for a real tightrope for Erdogan to walk. And he has walked it. Boy, there's no doubt about that. The situation with Turkey is complicated because their neighbor Syria has a large Kurdish population, and the PKK has been doing cross-border raids, what many would call terrorism, what some would call freedom-fighting initiatives, into Turkey. So it's a problem. There's been a low-level, simmering, violent conflict there for 25 years. And of course, Syria was ruled by the Bashar al-Assad and his family for 2 generations of brutal dictatorship that shattered the country and destroyed it, as they did what these parasites do, and that is siphon off the wealth of a nation to feed their need for gilded toilets and $400 million luxury jets with bidets. So Syria was a problem for Erdogan. Bashar al-Assad was a problem for Erdogan. Bashar al-Assad was a puppet of the Kremlin regime. Make no mistake, it was Erdogan and Zelensky that removed Bashar al-Assad and toppled the dictatorship, the puppet regime of the Kremlin, and lost the Kremlin their Middle East military bases, their halfway points, their refueling stops and depots for all of the exploitation of the African continent that Russia is currently engaged in, and the destabilization of governments and the genocides there. Now, you may be saying to yourself, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Zelensky and Erdogan toppled Bashar al-Assad? You're goddamn right they did. It was Erdogan that brought in the Ukrainian special forces that trained for at least 8 months that we know of. Could have been a year, could have been longer. Ukrainian special forces in Syria training the Syrian rebels. On what technology specifically? What is the technology that the Ukrainians own, that they are creating the future with? Drone technology. Ukraine goes into Syria, at least 8 months of training with the rebels, with the insurgency. Gosh, I forget the name, what they called themselves right now. I apologize. I should know that. But the guy who toppled Assad and took his place, right? This was a big win for Erdogan. It helped stabilize his border. It helped with his refugee crisis. Hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees that had been encamped inside of Turkey left. They were able to go home. That's a big win. A few months later, we have a ceasefire negotiation and an actual ceasefire that could lead to long-term peace between the PKK and Turkey. Big win. Big win for Turkey. Control of their border regions, less pressure from a refugee crisis, etc. And all made possible through Zelensky's support and the drones and drone training he gave the Syrians. So those guys are tight. And what came out of the thing that rang, that must have rung in Putin's ears like the klaxon of his own demise, were the words from Erdogan. We recognize the territorial integrity of Ukraine and its internationally recognized 1991 borders. Crimea is Ukraine. To be standing at the podium with the president of Turkey, a dear friend of Vladimir Putin's, and having him say those words is a PR win of momentous occasion. So that's all good news, right? I don't like your tone, especially not talking to Waza that way. Waza's a good guy. We may differ on a few points, but you don't talk that way in here, please. Hey, Bjorn. So these words from Erdogan are meaningful. Now let's talk about this. So that's in Ankara, right? And Ankara is the capital of Turkey. Istanbul is its major city, the one we all think of, right? It used to be Constantinople, now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. So if you've got a date in Constantinople, she'll be waiting in Istanbul. We're all clear on that, right? The amazing thing about Istanbul is that it spans the continents of Europe and Asia. The city is right there on the Straits of the Bosphorus and Dardanelles, and it spans those two continents if you think Europe's a continent. Now, well, I'm 906, Bobby, don't forget. In our relationship, you're the young thing. I'm the cradle robber. Remember that. 906. Next October. So, correct, Ethelred. Correct. Nice. So Ankara is where Zelensky went. He didn't go to Istanbul. Why would he? Putin's not there. Let's remember. Now, look, we got to go. Follow me here, please. Because this is so important. Because we know that Donald Trump is in Putin's corner. Everything Donald Trump does is a goddamn bouquet of flowers to that murderous, genocidal lunatic in the Kremlin. They're in it together. They are in cahoots. The U.S. federal system of government has been subverted by a Russian puppet in the person of Donald Trump, who is doing everything he can to support Putin in this. And let's look at the evidence, shall we? Last week, Trump said to the world, before there are negotiations, there must be a verifiable ceasefire. Okay, yes, that's a reasonable thing to say. The Europeans jumped on the bandwagon. Remember, Saturday was day 3 of Putin's so-called ceasefire. And in Kyiv were Keir Starmer, PM for the Brits, Emmanuel Macron for the French, and Merz for the Germans. So major players in this process. We're all here, as well as a large contingent of EU folks who had been in Lviv on Friday. And out of all of that came two things. The Lviv meeting, we're going to have a tribunal for war crimes. We're going to prosecute these Russians who are guilty of these war crimes. And we're going to take 1.9 billion euros from the frozen Russian assets. We're going to give it to Ukraine, and we're going to let them make their own weapons. Right? So here's €1 billion. Buy your own weapons from your own production facilities. Beautiful. Good all around. No logistics issues, helps the economy here. No waiting. From the plant to the front line, bang, you're done. Beautiful. That's what came out of the meeting in Lviv. From the meeting here in Kyiv between Starmer, Macron, and Merz, and Zelensky, of course, the Europeans said to Donald Trump, Donald Trump makes everything about him, so let's make this about him too. The Europeans turned to Donald Trump on Saturday and said, Mr. President, we are with you. Your European allies stand behind you. We agree. There should be no peace talks until there is a ceasefire. And if there is not a ceasefire, we will join you in putting sanctions on Russia. Bone-crushing sanctions. That's Saturday, right? Putin stays up all night, has this fucking bullshit PR stunt of a press conference at 2 a.m. where he says to the world, before there can be any kind of ceasefire, we must meet to discuss the root causes of this war. Now, look, the root causes of this war are that Putin's a genocidal lunatic. That's the root cause of this war. Make no mistake. But he rejected outright the idea of a ceasefire. This was early Sunday morning. Well, hell, not 6 hours goes by. Trump wakes up. He sees this press conference from Putin, and he truths out. Actually, no, it might have been like 4 o'clock. It was probably like 4 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning, something like that. He truths out, Putin doesn't want a ceasefire, calls for talks in Istanbul Thursday. Ukraine should agree immediately. He pulled the rug out from under his European allies less than 16 hours after they had signed up for his vision of the world. Because he is a puppet of the Kremlin. The Kremlin doesn't want a ceasefire? Okay, no ceasefire. Kremlin wants talks on Thursday? Kremlin gets talks on Thursday. What Trump is still trying to do, and which he has failed at spectacularly, is through neo-colonial economic coercion and through outright threats and intimidation, because Ukraine has no cards, is trying to get Ukraine to capitulate, to give up, to give in. As if these people who have suffered the way that they have suffered for 3 years running are now going to ask for a ride out of town instead of ammo. You're living in an alternate universe. That's not going to happen here. The Ukrainian people and the righteous wrath of the Ukrainian people burns fiercely and screams out, cries out for justice every day, in spite of everything. So Trump gives Russia everything it wants, pulls the rug out from under our allies, and Zelensky calls the bluff. Sunday afternoon, Zelensky didn't hesitate. Zelensky said, okay, you want peace talks? No ceasefire? I'll abide by the ceasefire. You notice I haven't reported on any Ukrainian drone strikes into Russia since last Thursday. The Ukrainians are showing tremendous restraint in the face of an aggressive bastard who, as a PR stunt, called a 3 declared unilaterally, as if he could by fiat, declared a 3-day ceasefire, which he broke immediately. The drones were in the air at 2:20 a.m. on Thursday the 8th. I know. We had an air raid here in Kyiv. 2:20 a.m. the Air Force reported the first launch. Now, I will admit freely, fully, that Wednesday night into Thursday morning of this so-called ceasefire, Ukraine sent about 100 drones into Russia. However, they were not attack drones. They didn't hit anything. The Ukrainians were reconnoitering. They were doing reconnaissance on the location of the air defenses because everything got moved to Moscow. 280 pieces of air defense got moved to Moscow. That means there's a lot of fat, juicy targets in eastern or in western Russia that are no longer protected by air defense. So the drones that Ukraine sent the first day of the ceasefire were for intelligence gathering. Not a single report of a single attack drone. Get it? Got it? Good. And not 1 cent, by the way. Fighting continues unabated along the front line. You know how we know? Because for the 3 days of Putin's so-called ceasefire, the Russian Federation lost an estimated 3,920 men. That's KIA, WIA, POW, and MIA. Right? 4,000, call it 4,000. You don't lose 4,000 men in 3 days unless you're on the offensive. And they were on the offensive. So their whole ceasefire bullshit of 3 days for the parade was just that, a lot of bullshit. There was no ceasefire. The Ukrainians, though, I will point out, have continued to defend themselves but have not attacked Russia since May 8th. Okay? Sunday morning, after Donald Trump fucked everybody over again, Putin calls for talks immediately. Trump says, okay. Zelensky says, fine. I'll be waiting for you in Istanbul. I can just hear Putin now. Tell him I thought he was in Constantinople. Tell him I was in Constantinople. He was waiting in the wrong place. Putin hasn't left his bunker. He's holed up in the Kremlin by all accounts, ever since Victory Day parade. Well, ever since he saw Xi off on Saturday. There was a lot of chatter. Now, I don't know this part to be true, but there was a lot of chatter that Putin had asked, are you ready for this? That if he went to Turkey to meet Zelensky, that Zelensky wouldn't attack him physically. That he wanted some assurances that he would be protected from Zelensky. He is a frightened, sick, paranoid old man. He is not strong. He is weak. Everything he does shows how weak he is. How long the Russian people will continue to let their sons be thrown into Putin's meat grinder, their economies wrecked, their pensioners starving, eating out of the trash. How long they're going to let that go on is anybody's guess. But Putin knows jujitsu. It's funny you say that, Henry. I was just having this conversation with my buddy Arne. Arne made the same point, right? And I had to say, yeah, you're right. Judo. I think, Arn, you're right. It's judo. He's a judo guy. And what is the nature of judo? The nature of judo is opportunistic. When you can get your opponent off his feet, that's when you sweep kick him down. Your opponent is off balance, you make him more off balance. I love the Welsh. I love anybody who has their heraldic beast has a mythical one. I think that's great. Hang on, Alex. Let's come back to that, okay? Remind me, please. Let's get through Istanbul first and the Finnish border. Let's talk about these two things. So Zelensky calls the bluff. Putin backs down like cowards and bullies always do, like we're watching Trump do with China right now. He backs down. He's hiding in his bunker. Initially, he was supposed to send Lavrov, but instead he sent some third-string AAA team nobodies. Well, actually, in point of fact, the lead negotiator on this thing, I forget his name. It's like Milosavsky. Does anybody know his name? This is the same son of a bitch who ran the negotiations in Istanbul back in 2022. That weren't negotiations. They were absolutely depending on this guy getting the Ukrainians to concede, to submit, to surrender. This is the same guy that is suspected This is the same guy that they think ghost wrote the 1,700 or so word article that appeared in some state media. Oh, I want to say back in like 2012. I want to say it was like 2010, 2012. And it was supposed to be an op-ed written by Putin himself. But it's commonly believed that this guy was the one who actually wrote it. And what was the subject of this op-ed? That Ukraine is not a real country. That Ukrainian people aren't real people. They're just an offshoot of Russia, of Mother Russia. There are Russian brothers, right? Their language is like ours. We have the same language, the same background, all this bullshit. And they're not a real country. They're not a real people. And so the stage is set for the kind of creation of this mythos that will let the Russians erase from history an entire people, culture, and language that stands in deep opposition to what Russia is. That stands, in fact, as an insult to Russia. The freedom, the sovereignty, the democracy that exists here, not to mention the benefits of a capitalist culture rather than an outright oligarchy, which means that all the people here have toilets. There's a fucking reason that the Russians were stealing toilets. It's because 1 out of 5 Russians don't have indoor plumbing. 1 out of 5. 20% of the country is wallowing in abject poverty because 400 people steal everything for themselves. And that's not an exaggeration. 400 people in Russia own 99.98% of it all. You think we have wealth inequality in the United States? We don't know shit about wealth inequality. 400 people, 99.8%. And make no mistake, that's why Trump is wrecking our economy. He's looking to concentrate all wealth in the hands of a few and create a new American corporate oligarchy with himself and his children as eternal CEOs and board of directors. That's what's going on. The coming Great Depression, global Great Depression, is absolutely on purpose and an unforced error by our commander-in-chief, who, by the way, did manage to make the entire Istanbul peace negotiations about himself. So he was asked if he was going to go, or what he thought about Putin not going. That's what it was. He was asked what he thought about Putin not going. And do you know what this son of a bitch said? He said, "Oh, I don't think he's going because I'm not going. If I was going, he would be going. But he knows I'm not going, so why would he go?" So the talks that Putin called for, the talks that Zelensky agreed to, the complete failure of the Russian Federation to make it through the ceasefire for 2 hours and 20 minutes, 2 hours and 20 minutes, is a farce of such grand proportions. You know, it's worthy of, I don't know, maybe an Andrew Lloyd Webber score. It's that kind of Tony-winning insanity that we're talking about here. Needless to say, Zelensky took one look at this team that the Russians sent and said, "I'm not staying for this. Why would I? We need direct negotiations with Putin now." Now, here's where we're at. The talks are supposed to happen tomorrow. Initially, the European Union had decided that they were not going to push their sanctions packages until after the talks. Well, that all changed when Trump pulled the rug out from under them. And so the Europeans unveiled a new range of sanctions packages. There are now 350 vessels of the Russian Shadow Fleet identified and sanctioned from pulling into any EU port. In addition to sanctioning the fleet that lets Putin get around the oil sanctions, they've sanctioned 30 firms in, a dozen different countries: Uzbekistan, Vietnam, Kazakhstan, those kinds of places, that were selling dual-use technology to the Russians. So these are microchips that could go into, say, a Sony PlayStation or into an Iskander missile. So 30 plus firms in a dozen countries sanctioned. 70 plus firms inside of Russia working for the military-industrial complex. So nobody can do business with any of these entities any longer. Any country found to be doing business with any of these entities can be subject to a secondary sanction. This is good news. This puts more and more pressure on the Russian economy and the Russian military-industrial complex to be able to get access to the technology and resources that it needs to prosecute this war, or indeed to make repairs to the oil refineries that Ukraine will surely begin targeting again soon, right? Zelensky took one look at the Russians today, flew home. For Zelensky, the talks tomorrow, because there will be talks, the Russian delegation is there, the Ukrainian delegation is there, they're going to talk. But right off the bat, the two are coming at it from completely different perspectives. For Zelensky and the Ukrainian team, these talks are all about how do we get to a ceasefire. That is not what these talks are about for the Russians. For the Russians, these talks are about addressing the underlying causes of the war, the Nazism in Ukraine, the genocide of Russian-speaking people in the Donbass, neither of which is true. So we have to get to the root causes, which are lies you made up. Where do you start with these psychopaths? These are people who poured 250,000 troops over the border and told them to murder everyone in sight. Insanity. Insanity that anybody thinks we can rationally deal with or negotiate with terrorists like this, with people who prefer to bomb schools and hospitals because that serves a purpose. You degrade the social safety net in order to terrorize the country into creating a refugee crisis that overwhelms the European Union, which is what Trump was trying to, Putin. I get the two confused. It's very easy to confuse the two, which was what Putin was up to. It's part of the strategy of this war. Evening, Sergey. How you doing? Hey, Biker73. So Trump is not going. So this is the funniest part to me. Trump said he's not going to Turkey. Pardon me, Turkiye. We are supposed to call it Turkiye now. And if I'll recognize your pronouns, I'll certainly recognize when somebody tells me how to pronounce the name of their fucking country. Turkiye. So Trump says this stupid thing. Why would Putin go to Turkiye if I'm not going? Let's just unpack this little bit of narcissism. What that says, what that reveals to us, in my opinion, is that Trump still believes Ukraine doesn't matter. That ultimately, the negotiation between Trump and Putin on how they're going to split up Ukraine is how he really thinks of this situation. And as an American, I'm deeply saddened to say that. It is a black mark. The treatment of the Ukrainians and the country of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people by this administration will leave a black mark, an indelible defect in the soul and psyche of the American culture and people. Much to our shame. Much to our shame. So, I'll tell you, that wasn't the worst of what he said. Because later on Air Force One, a kid from the BBC got to him and asked him, what was he disappointed in the Russian delegation? You have to, I really encourage everybody to watch this. It's very painful. It's hard to watch. It's hard to listen to him. But it is important that we look the evil that we are facing in the eye and we understand it when it tells us what it is. Because when asked, was he disappointed in the delegation? Trump's response was, delegation? What delegation? You think I care about a delegation? We just did $4 trillion in business. I don't care about a delegation. Delegations don't mean anything. Nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together. Nothing's going to happen until I sit down with Putin. So Trump is shouting through a megaphone that he and Putin are going to make the decisions about the future of Ukraine. Nobody else. Certainly the Ukrainians don't matter in that discussion because they're not a real people. They're not a real country. It's for us to decide what their futures are. He was very clear about that, in my opinion, with these comments. The other thing I think that those comments reveal, he said, what did he say exactly now? Now I just lost it. He said, nothing's going to happen until I sit down with Putin, right? Nothing's going to happen till I sit down with Putin. Why do you think he said in the first place, I might go to Turkiye? He said it because the plan's not working. He was not able to force Ukraine to submit He was not able to drive a wedge between the Europeans and the Ukrainians. Instead, he is galvanizing the world against Russia and the United States with his battle plans for invading Canada. I mean, really, like, you look at this son of a bitch, and all he does is vilify our best friends and trading partners, alienating them, and thus reducing our power in the world, which is part of his job, as a creature of the Kremlin, as a puppet of Putin. His entire job is to wreck the image of America in the world. Like we need any help doing that, right? But he is certainly accelerating the process. And then the other part of it is to make sure that the United States is too busy with its own self-created drama to be helpful to anybody in the world. You know, when he created drama to be helpful to anybody in the world. You know, when he left office the first time, there were 2,000 unfilled State Department jobs by design to limit American power in the world. And look at everything he has done since he's gotten into office. He has disbanded, he cut the funding, a lousy $8 million. A lousy $8 million to help the Ukrainians find the children that the Russians have stolen. He cut that. He cut the group that was investigating Russian oligarch crime in the United States and the task force that was engaged in seizing Russian assets for those crimes. Disbanded them. Russia's not committing any crimes. He introduces his gold card citizenship, as if citizenship in the United States is like having a Sam's Club membership. So being an American isn't any longer about believing in democracy and freedom. It's about whether or not you're rich and you can buy your way in. It is such a fundamental betrayal of everything that we are supposed to hold sacred as Americans that it is difficult to know how to even respond to this evil. And now, while he is deporting the hardworking immigrants, and indeed green card holders who the court has told him not to deport, and even American citizens now, for no offense other than being poor. Because that's what Trump is about. He is completely transactional in his nature. The only thing that matters to him is money. He does not care that the Qataris just gave him a jet. He doesn't care how it looks. He only cares that it's a gold-plated jet with 9 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms, and a bidet. And it's gold-plated for him, $400 million. He doesn't care that it doesn't have the communications hub and the advanced technical capabilities that Air Force One allows for the immediate security briefing of the president at any time, anywhere they are in the world, and direct lines of communication to the command and control centers of the American military. He doesn't care about any of that at all. He wants goddamn gold-plated faucets. That's all that matters to him. He wants to walk down plush carpet steps to the second floor, to the galley, to get some McDonald's. I mean, really. This guy is class with a capital K. So nobody is expecting much to come out of tomorrow's talks in Istanbul. It's a lot of bullshit from the Kremlin. It's the old delay, reframe, deny kind of process of the Kremlin. Now that's Istanbul and the peace talks. The other big story that came out yesterday that I wanted to talk about last night, and I can address very quickly, then we'll take Alex's question. It seemed to me yesterday that every headline in every major paper was Russia amasses troops on Finnish border. All of the details of why that's a load of shit are documented in my News We Are Waking Up To segment from yesterday, which I have not yet published to YouTube or the Peter's Peeps channels, but I will. I will get that done. The satellite images are clear. To me, it seems very clear. What the Russians are doing all along the Finnish border are building Potemkin-style military installations. These are hollow, empty, they serve no real purpose. They might as well be made from cardboard. They are just there to try to intimidate the Finns, as if Tony Takiri was here this week too. I don't know, is Tony in tonight? Are you here, Tone? Tone's probably on the road. So what it looks like they're doing is they're renovating an airfield. They put up 130 tents. So you could theoretically house 2,000 soldiers there, but there's nobody living there, and they're tents. They built some storage sheds for like tanks, but there are no tanks. And they moved a bunch of helicopters onto that airfield that they're redoing the runway, right? All finish this would, please, for the love of God, please. If somebody knows somebody in Finnish intelligence, if you could just fly a drone, a reconnaissance drone, near those helicopters, I want to know if those helicopters are full of little holes from ATACMS, tungsten balls, and will never fly again. If we can get somebody in there to take pictures of those helicopters, and those helicopters are Swiss cheesed, we know exactly where they came from, and we know they will never fly again. Therefore, the only reason to have them there is as a bluff, yet another bluff. I still remember March of 2022, Putin said in an interview to TASS and to the world, I am not bluffing. I am not bluffing. I am not bluffing. What do you think is more likely? Is that a guy who says I'm not bluffing is bluffing, or that he's going to use nukes? He's the bluff master. And the greatest bluff that he has ever played, the greatest lie he has ever gotten the West to believe, is that he can be appeased, that he can be given enough that he'll be satisfied. It's a lie and a sin. His appetites are insatiable. They will never know satiation. Now, Alex had a question. How can the Russian economy not collapse if the price of oil doesn't collapse? Or if the price of oil does collapse? Is that the question? Remind me again. Does anybody remember? Is Alex still here? Everybody, there's Jax. Oh no, that's Jenks. Jemsk. Okay, Alex, I'm sorry. I apologize because there's a subtle difference in how you asked that question. How did you ask that question exactly? Now, let me just say while Alex is typing, big thanks to Jax for sponsoring a live, for being the first time to sponsor. Big thanks to Scully and Ted, who are both brand new live sponsors, and to Samso, who sponsored last time. Need sponsors for next week. If some more new people can step up, that would make me very happy. It's not that I don't appreciate the contributions from the board of directors, gentlemen. You all know that I do. You all know that I do. But it is important that we all try to work together. And if you can't sponsor us live, maybe join the Patreon for $5 a month. Also, Chris Carter and Blue Ariel Silk. Okay, can you explain in depth how Russia's economy wouldn't collapse if oil prices dropped a lot, please. Alex, can I ask, are you getting this from Mr. Global's analysis? Is that the origin of this? For anybody who doesn't know, Mr. Global is an oil and gas industry expert. A lot of my current understanding of the market is that much of my understanding of the market comes from him, right? Or he reinforces what I understand. You watched my video on him. There have been a couple, but I assume you're referring to the latest one, which is about this very subject. So Mr. Global and I disagree at this point, which I don't think I went into in the video. I focused on what we agreed on. And that was what I got. It's because, see, he answered a very important question for me. I keep thinking, why would OPEC and Russia, why would OPEC increase production when it would be detrimental to Russia, given the history and that Russia is in OPEC plus? And I couldn't figure it out, man, until Mr. Global said the words, because Putin thinks he's winning. Putin, Mohammed bin Salman, and Trump, they're in it together. There's no doubt about it. And they all each represent one of the three largest extraction economies in the world. Each one of those three guys represent the top three oil-producing countries on Earth. Now, Mr. Global and I have disagreed about the realities of the Russian economy vis-a-vis its extraction economy. And we disagree on this point, Alex, because Mr. Global thinks the Russians will be just fine even if the price of oil collapses. I do not. I don't. I think that if the oil revenue is cut, remember, this war is costing him $300 million to $500 million a day. If that revenue stream is cut off, along with the knock-on benefits of that revenue stream in a country with an economy where interest rates are at 21% for the last 8 months, where inflation is running at 10.1% officially, Hankey's puts it much higher, where there's a labor shortage of 4.2 million jobs, and where the economy is absolutely dependent on a war that is about to end? No. Now, see, this is where Mr. Global and I disagree. I do not believe for 1 second that the collapse of oil prices will be something Russia survives. And I mean that. I believe that the math speaks for itself. And the lessons of history are such that when the numbers look like this, only one thing happens. The country we once knew as Russia ceases to exist. There will be a period of chaos there. And then what grows out of it is anybody's guess. When it will happen, I don't know. Russia has deep pockets. I am surprised it's taken this long. Bloom time, I agree, they are in the process, right? But it's 500 years of empire. I mean, ultimately, it's the wealth of the czars that is still propping up the oligarchs. Just like it propped up the Politburo, just like the wealth of the stolen wealth of the Politburo propped up the oligarchs. They do have gold, but so the thing about the gold is, I'm having real trouble with that. There are different sources that say different things about how much gold the Russians actually have. We know they're paying for the Iranian drones in gold from Africa. So they've compromised some African nations and they've gotten control over some gold mines down there. The gold gets mined in Africa, it gets smelted into bars, it gets sent to Iran. The Iranians then send drones to the Russians via the Caspian Sea. That's how they're funding that. The liquid assets in the sovereign wealth fund include about 37 billion in yuan, Chinese yuan, and I want to say something like 20 tons of gold. But that's down. Both those numbers are down. So, good night, Van. Take care, brother. So, Alex, if I understand the question correctly, the reality is that Mr. Global and I disagree on the outcome of the collapse of oil prices. He thinks Russia will be okay. I think Vladimir Putin believes Russia will be okay, but I don't believe it will be. Does that answer the question? No, Alex. The oil is 1/3 of the economy. And before the war, it was 2/3. What's taken up that other third? The production of war materials, which is a losing proposition. That doesn't build an economy. Okay, now I think there was one other question that I saw here that I wanted to answer real quick. It's bigger than you think. I know what's going on. Do I think nukes will be used? Now, it's funny. I mean, Arn, it's a very complex problem. There's no way I'm getting it right. But somewhere around there, I don't think I'm far off. It's a leaner, right? In the United States, if we're playing horseshoes, we'd say it's a leaner, meaning it's leaning against the post, so it's worth 1 point. I don't pretend for a second that my analysis is infallible like the new Pope. It's not. But I would put American money on something like that being the outcome. Yeah, my pleasure, Alex. It was a great question, pal. It's a great question. And it brings up, I mean, I'm not an expert. Not when it comes to oil and gas, the way that Mr. Global is. So on most things, I tend, if I'm not clear, I tend to, listen to what he's saying. But on the Russian economy, I think I may have an edge there. Anyway, on the subject of nuclear weapons, if you had asked me before the re-election of Donald Trump, would nuclear weapons be used, I would have said absolutely not. Now I would say it's not outside the realm of probability. I'm not saying that it's a small chance. But it's a bigger chance than it was. If before Trump got involved, it was a 1% chance, let's say. Today, it's maybe a 5%. It could be as high as 5%. Now, why do I say that? I say that because Trump keeps giving Russia false hope. And you can see it if you get the Russian stock exchange and you take a look. Trump says good things about Russia, says he's going to help Russia, stock exchange goes way up. Trump says bad things about Russia, support for Russia declining, stock market goes down. This whole peace talk in Istanbul caused a 2.5% loss on the Russian stock market today. 2.5% one day. It's on its way to another correction. So, oh God, Chef Deb. There's all this drama going in the background that I don't know anything about. Hey, Lars, have we done that before? Have we hit 100K before? What has Putin gained in the last month? Nothing. Dude, I wonder if Putin's even still alive. I really do. Well, we'll see. All right, kids. All right, well, that's another one in the belt. You guys are the best. Thank you. Thank you. Do I get a new jet now? I'd like it to have a bidet, please. I always wanted a bidet. Okay. Guys, again, thanks to Samso, who was our sponsor last time. Thanks to Jax, who was our sponsor tonight. Thanks to Scully, who will be our sponsor tomorrow. And thanks to the two Patreon sponsors of tonight, Chris Carter and Blue Ariel Silk. I'm Peter Alexievich. This has been the Live at 5 from Kyiv, coming to you from this major European capital that is still under siege. There is no ceasefire here. So, ladies and gentlemen and other non-binary folks, thanks so much. 102,000 likes. You guys are the best. And I look forward to speaking to you all tomorrow. If anybody can join the Patreon who hasn't, or if you're a free Patreon guy, maybe you could upgrade and throw me $5 a month. Times are getting tough. There's no two ways about it. So it is really gratifying to see a bunch of new people stand up, join the Patreon, and sponsor a live. Thank you, Jax. Thank you, everybody. Make it a great day.